Kia ora e te whānau, nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kōrero, ko ahorangi Martin Carroll tōku ingoa. I'm Professor Martin Carroll. I'm the Deputy Chief Executive for Unitec and MIT, and I'll pass to my colleague.
Koto, I'm James Oldfield, the Manager of Digital Learning at Unitec.
Folks, we wanted to share with you today what we're doing in developing and deploying AI-powered Ako agents. You can think of an Ako agent as a specialist chatbot accessible through an LMS course site. In our experience, an Ako agent works best if it has a relatively limited scope of activity. So a course site could conceivably have many Ako agents. We could easily imagine each course site having one per week, let's say 20 in total. We have about 4,000 course sites. So you could imagine a world in which we have many tens of thousands of these Ako agents, and developing them and putting them into a course site would be by the teaching staff using templates and as normal as adding any kind of content into an LMS course site. We partner with Cognity out of the University of Sydney. We consider them to be a really good option for at least the initial stages of our learning journey here. They have a dedicated platform enabling specialized Ako agents to be developed. It's secure. It has the potential to be hosted in New Zealand and thereby governed by our laws. It has transparent logs, markups, a whole number of other functions which James will touch on. We know that there's other products that are in the market and many more on the way. But for now, we're working with Cognity and trusting that the lessons that we take out of that could be transferable if ever that came to pass. So let's talk about some of the advantages that Ako agents have over human teachers. Yes, we're going to get controversial right from the get-go. They are available 24/7. They are always there. They are always happy. They're never in a bad mood. They are increasingly capable of phenomenal accuracy, drawing upon obviously vast quantities of information. They're increasingly easy to develop. They do not take a long time. They take longer to perfect, but one can hit the ground running fairly quickly. And they leave a reviewable trail of their interactions with students, which of course we as human teachers do not. So you might think, well, why on earth wouldn't we just use Ako agents from now on? But there are risks, and let's have a look at some of those risks. The main one, of course, is that AI is still capable of going very wrong indeed. And it can sometimes be subtle, and a learner, for example, might not realize an AI agent is leading them astray, or it could be wildly inappropriate. And we're all familiar with examples of that happening. Think Tay and some of those earlier AI chatbots. They're not accountable. Who does a learner see if an AI agent led them astray? They are constrained by the parameters of the large language models that they're based upon. For example, the reason that ChatGPT has survived as long as it has is because it is coded to avoid, shall we say, problematic areas. It's coded to avoid discussing in too much detail sex, death, violence, politics, the types of issues that, quite frankly, as educators, we need to be engaging our learners in. Of course, they lack human nuance. They are based on algorithms, but they lack emotional experience that can help a more fulsome and nuanced engagement with learners. A human staff member might, through their intuition, know when to proactively reach out and engage with the learner. AI is not yet capable of being independently proactive based on those types of intuitions. Of course, as you know, there are data security risks, and cost is going to ramp up. in this space. So look, it's not as simple as saying these things are replacing teaching. They have a place, teachers have a place, and this project is about us exploring that in a little bit more detail. I'm going to pass to James, who will step you through in detail the project that we're undertaking right now. Kia ora, James.
All right, Martin. Yeah, so the project that we're underway with at Unitec and MIT at the moment is all about building these agents. And as Martin just mentioned, we're building our agents using a platform called Cogniti. It's been a great platform to work with. And at the moment, all our agents are text-driven. These are text-driven based on OpenAI models. There's a range of those different models. And with our agents, we're actually reinforcing the prompting that we put into the agents with some additional resources, which might be course materials, it might be other materials or legislation or documentation that's available online, and that helps ground the agents in making sure that they're using the right kind of content for our context. And one of the great things about these agents is actually that they are transparent for our kaimahi, whereas a conversation with a chatbot online that a student is using with one that we don't control, there's no way of looking at those kinds of conversations. With our ones, we can see all of the conversations that are happening. Our ākonga can provide feedback with a simple thumbs up or a thumbs down mechanism on any of the conversation points that appear. And so we can continually improve the quality of our agents and also monitor for anything kind of that might become a bit harmful. We've got a few agents underway at the moment, and we've grouped them into these different types of categories of agents. We have simulation agents, and these ones show an awful lot of promise. They can pretend to be a patient, they can pretend to be a nurse, a client, and so we've got a number of these in the works. Which allow a student to interact with someone as if it's that type of persona in the real world. We have tutoring agents, and so these are more kind of designed to actually teach the ākonga something or help them to kind of unpack different bits of information they might have learned in a lecture or in a practical class. We have feedback agents, and these are great for taking on board the student work that's been done and providing them feedback. So not giving them the answers, but actually providing them feedback through a structured process. And then we have practice agents. And so these are really where a student wants to be able to do a bit of repetition and practice a number of different variations of a task. And so the agent doesn't get tired and gives them different variations over and over with consistently quality responses and feedback. We're also exploring the idea of culturally informed agents. And one particular example of this is where we're collaborating with Toi Ohomai on the development of some agents for the field of nursing education. And so these agents will all be informed by the Health Council's Te Tiriti principles. And so any of the responses that they give will be considering that information in the first instance before they begin talking to the ākonga. One of my teams also working on a talanoa agent. And so these agents show promise, but we're obviously taking this very carefully and really just internally testing at the moment before they go live with any of our ākonga. This next slide shows you an example that we have of one of our agents. This is a medical imaging agent using a format of conversation called ISBAR. And so, as you can see, the conversation takes place between the agent and the person typing away. And it starts off with the agent providing some context around the kaupapa of that conversation. It talks you through a little bit about its role and the role that you play. And in this case, it's about a patient scenario, and the scenarios change every time, where you need to communicate back to the agent and you need to follow that ISBAR model. So for starters here, you can see the conversation kicks off with the learner providing some information about the patient as part of that conversation. And then the agent itself will respond based on each message that the ākonga has sent to them. And it'll provide feedback at the end of the conversation. So right now, with the ISBAR process, that tells you how you should structure your communication with another medical professional. And so the student, in this case, is writing this long message here, where they're explaining the different key parts of the situation, making sure that they follow that model. And while the agent is taking this information in, it reserves its feedback until the end of the conversation. And the great thing about something like this is that you can continue to practice this as many times as you like. So the agent has now taken that on board, it's given a response, and then when the student is finished with the conversation, they can then essentially end the conversation, and the agent will change its persona, if you like, to one where it provides some feedback. So here you can see it's used the isbar format to actually provide feedback against each step of the process. As part of our journey here, we've been conducting focus groups with several groups of our ākonga. And the way we've done this is we've worked with quantity surveying students, medical imaging, and early childhood, where we have senior students who've completed a course, and they're looking at the agents that are designed for the course that they've already completed. So it's a nice, safe kind of environment where there's no impact on grades or anything like that. We provide the ākonga with some koha for their time. And we're only taking on people that are interested in learning about this and being involved in our study. And in this way, we're able to introduce the agents to real students, but in a safe way that won't impact the students as they're studying. So I'm going to walk you through some examples of some of the feedback that we've had from our ākonga through these different focus groups, and look at some of the key findings that we've had from working with our agents.
I thought it was pretty easy. It even told you like a wee description of like what ISBAR was if we'd forgotten. So it said like you got to identify, then you got to do this and this. Like it was very straightforward, and then it gave you feedback for the next time, which made it even easier.
Yeah, I would think it definitely did help me understand the material quite well. I think with the feedback that it also gave, because you could also ask for a score or just a general feedback after each scenario, helped me to better understand where I did well, where I could improve, etc.
I think it was cool that it gave its own recommendations. So like you could say like, oh yeah, how many times more do you think I should practice before I get really good at it? And you probably said like, oh, maybe practice these two more times, improve on these aspects, and I think you're ready for like a real world scenario. So I was really happy with that.
I thought the feedback was pretty helpful for the most part, because it broke it down section by section, what you did well, what you could improve on.
I would recommend it for if you need repetition and like help with practicing certain things.
I thought it was helpful to give confirmation that we were right in our knowledge that we thought before, that what we just learnt last year, we come back, did those things and it confirmed it. I think that was good.
I would recommend it as well because I think it's a good additional resource on top of lectures, and especially for a course like land surveying, it's very hard to find additional information outside of the lecture. Like if you look online, there's not much help you can get from it, so this AI, which is very tailored to our course, helps quite a lot as an additional like help from the lectures.
I think the more agents the better. If they suit people, then it's a benefit for everyone. If they don't suit them, they can just use another source of materials to do their learning, which is what we've already got available. So yeah, the more the better, I guess.
Need to have a lot of calculations. Sometimes we go to the maths tutor that we have here, but even they kind of struggle with the maths because it's survey maths, that's what they say, and it's not like everyday maths that we use.
Yeah, I can add to that. I've been speaking to a couple of people trying to get some extra help with some of the math that we do for surveying, and a lot of those tutors don't understand how we do our certain math calculations, so they get a bit lost, and I can't actually get specific help for those certain areas. And so surveying is such a different field that we're learning. You can't really speak to anyone else and then for to understand what's going on, you can only speak to your tutor or like other class members. It's a very niche market or like field to learn it. It's very confusing. So yeah, more resources would help a lot, I think. This would help a lot, I think.
There's some pretty good positive feedback there from our ākonga around what they found valuable about the agents. Clearly, they valued the ability to kind of practice, to get really good quality contextualized feedback. The feedback is something that you don't quite get with a traditional resource in an LMS. You get it based on exactly the conversation that you've had with that agent. And one of the other really interesting things that we found along the way, in particular with things like quantity surveying, where it is a highly specialized area of maths. And while we have math support available to our ākonga, perhaps it's not as tailored to this specific subject as it could be. And straight away, our Konga are realizing that actually having something tailor-made to their course that's available when they need it is of huge value to them. So interesting feedback from the Akonga. Next, we'll have a little bit of a look at any areas that they found problematic.
Personally, the things that I got told to improve on were things that I couldn't even provide. Like, it asked me to provide more background information to improve, but there was no background information for me to give.
I like that, like she said, the feedback was categorized in different sections. However, it's not too accurate. Like, when you try and trip it, like, you don't introduce yourself or you don't provide the energy, it's still like, you did a good job at identifying yourself when you didn't even identify yourself. So the sections and stuff are good, but the feedback itself is inaccurate.
We certainly found that there were some instances where, while the feedback was tailored, it was often overly positive, which is essentially the default position for many large language models. So it requires a little bit of further prompting to ensure that it's not overly positive and giving them the wrong impression with the feedback. And in certain cases, that might be something that's happened outside of the parameters of the exercise that the agent's looking for. So while we've spent a lot of time testing and continually revising, we keep finding little areas that we can continue to improve. Next, we want to talk a little bit about the trust and confidence with these agents, because that's an interesting issue that we wanted to explore. There's certainly been quite a bit in the media around people and their engagements with AI, and so we were keen to find out a bit more about that from our Akonga.
I think it'd be quite useful to have it for a lot of the courses. It's just based on how these scenarios went, where it already was kind of losing information. I just feel it might be a bit iffy on a bit more complex topics, like the basics and stuff. I would totally use it. I just wouldn't be too confident about its feedback to me on anything maybe moderate to high complexity.
For improvement, it was quite easy to trip it up, we found. Like, you could just not include your name and it would still be like, well done for identifying yourself, or you could give the wrong date of birth and it would be like, yep, I know that patient, and it's like, okay, do you though? Yes, there were just a few things that, like, it just tripped up and kind of just carried on with the scenario, even though you've left out something quite, like, important.
Yeah, the feedback always seems like positive, like, oh, you did well.
A couple of interesting behaviors that we noticed when our Akonga were working with the agents are that they were, a small number, were intentionally trying to trip up the agents. And so we had a little bit of feedback along the way that you could avoid doing a certain activity, and then it might give you feedback that doesn't pick up on that. So there was an interesting thing that we found, and we're starting to build that more into our process and our testing. And the other thing was that a very small number of Akonga didn't really have a lot of trust in the first instance in the agents themselves. And so I feel that just, for me, is another reason why we need to be really careful with introducing this technology, because we need to build that level of trust, or if there isn't that level of trust, then they're not going to engage meaningfully with this kind of technology for their learning. Finally, we spent a little bit of time looking at what could be the future hold, and so we've talked to our Akonga about that as well.
I think it'd be quite useful to have it for a lot of the courses. It's just based on how these scenarios went, where it already was kind of losing information. I just feel it might be a bit iffy on a bit more complex topics, like the basics and stuff. I would totally use it. I just wouldn't be too confident about its feedback to me on anything maybe moderate to high complexity.
For improvement, it was quite easy to trip it up, we found. Like, you could just not include your name and it would still be like, well done for identifying yourself, or you could give the wrong date of birth and it would be like, yep, I know that patient, and it's like, okay, do you though? Yes, there were just a few things that, like, it just tripped up and kind of just carried on with the scenario, even though you've left out something quite, like, important.
Yeah, the feedback always seems like positive, like, oh, you did well.
I think I would want the agent to be used in other courses, because I think it would be really helpful where we can ask questions or practice questions, especially before exams or tests or anything, and also ask for feedback on what we could study more on or recommendations as well.
I think it'd be good for other courses because I already use ChatGPT to try and help me study. I think everyone does. So if there was a ChatGPT or some sort of agent that's more tailored to our course with more accurate kind of study materials, I think that'd be pretty good.
I think it could be quite helpful for like just making up practice questions in class. Yeah, giving examples of, oh, can you give me a short answer question or a multiple choice examples, and then we can just answer.
I think for this particular one it would work because we have to get assessed on speaking it verbally. Like in year one we get tested on this for audio recording, so that would be quite a good practice to do it rather than typing. But I imagine for other scenarios or classes it probably wouldn't be as helpful.
Just on that, with the speaking, I think it could actually be quite helpful with like oral exams as well, because that's something where we have to verbally speak out, as well as going through like I'm a creeper when you're critiquing images and things, because it's quite different studying it at home, doing it in your head versus in clinical, and you have to verbally say everything. So that could be good practice as well.
The same as my brother here with the lad and min, especially with report writing, especially us like in English as our second language. It would be very helpful if we have a AI tool like to give us an outline of how to structure proper report writing, and I think that will help us from the islands, and especially others that can't speak proper English, that has like low vocabulary, like to help them like to write their reports.
The overwhelming feedback we received is that they'd like to see more agents in more courses. We did hear about a number of individual courses where they feel it would be particularly useful. The Ākonga were looking for things like the opportunity for more and more practice exercises. You'd see in there the comments about having a ChatGPT that's specialized for their course, which is essentially what these agents are. So agents that are designed to not talk about everything else in the world, but actually think just about what's going on within a particular course or a particular discipline area. We also saw some information, some discussion there around the use of audio. So we do expect to be able to pilot some audio agents in the coming months. But for now, we are text-based, but you can see that there are certain scenarios where having the audio built into the agent would be of real benefit, and particularly something like that ISBAR conversation, because some of those conversations are written, but also some of them will be verbal. And finally, we saw the comments about support with writing, in particular for Ākonga with English as a second language. So I could see this could be a real opportunity for us to make sure that we have agents that are providing the right amount of support to help Ākonga with their writing without writing it for them. So lots of potential there, and we've got plenty of other ideas for what we'll be doing in the future with our development of more agents. I just want to spend a little bit of time explaining the process that we go through in developing our agents. So we use a partnering approach. So members of my academic advisor team would work directly with a kaiako or a group of kaiako in order to develop a concept and to build an agent. Once we've got an initial agent developed, we go through a design and test kind of iterative series of cycles where we internally test these agents. We see how they perform and how they work against the design that they had for them. And as we find that things need to change, we iteratively make changes to that design. So the agents go through a number of cycles before we think they're ready for kind of wider viewing. And then we move on to a quality assurance step. And at this point, we have a wider test team, and that will typically include other kaiako who have expertise but weren't involved in the development. And this is where we also bring in the past Ākonga, like you've seen in these focus groups. And then moving on from there, we look at deployment. And deployment is happening through our learning management system. I mentioned earlier that we have some transparency there. So while we've deployed these agents, they're available for Ākonga to use, sometimes just for a short period, sometimes for a longer period, depending on the nature of the agent. But we have this evaluation process that will be going on. We manage risks in real time, and then we're looking at a deeper evaluation where we have a mixed methods approach utilizing student feedback, usage data as well. We're looking at using surveys and focus groups to continue to kind of build this picture of the impact that these agents are having on the overall learner experience. Now I'll pass back to Martin to talk a little bit more about our governance.
Yeah, thanks, James. So it is quite quick to pull one of these together, and it takes a little longer to perfect it. And we're still working on that. How much investment is too much investment in an agent? But think about scaling that up to having tens of thousands of these things. That's a different set of considerations entirely. So we are in the process of establishing an overarching ethical framework, which goes all the way from our selection of LLM provider and platform, provider, through to how we prompt it, through to how we deploy it. The quality assurance framework that James talked about, which is separate again, will dictate what kind of approval each agent needs to go through before we release it into a course site. And that will also have a risk element to it. So for example, using an R-Core agent to provide some Socratic tutoring is one thing. Using an R-Core agent to formally assess student work might be quite a higher level of risk there. But I think the main thing that is starting to impress itself upon us is that there is a lot that R-Core agents could do that staff currently do. In fact, there's a lot that R-Core agents can do that staff are not capable of doing, and we touched on some of that earlier. That is going to change the nature of what students expect in the learning environment, and that will also lead to a change in the nature of what we expect from our academic staff. One could imagine that we might start saying these types of aspects of the learning environment will put in the hands of carefully developed and curated R-Core agents, but these types of things are matters that we will absolutely leave in the capable hands of our academic staff. That's going to have impact on things like professional development for staff. It's going to have impact on things like to where do we direct students for certain types of issues. It will have an impact on things like our timetable teaching hours. It will have impact on things like academic job descriptions. It will have broad scale impacts on workforce planning and workloads. So like I say, looking at these on a case-by-case basis is kind of fun, but we anticipate that within 12 to 24 months, this will be at a scale that requires systemic and policy and budget considerations to get underway right now. We could obviously talk much longer about these issues and go into the ethics in more detail and go into the QA framework in more detail, but we'll wrap it up there for now. We'd be very happy to hear from you with questions, and we'll help if we can, but also with sharing what you're doing. As far as we're concerned, even if we move into a more competitive environment in the future, this is a big enough space for us to all be able to make our contributions and to share them. So we look forward to hearing from you, and we thank the TEC for setting up this community of practice opportunity. Mā te wā.